These are the top 5 mistakes I see from newer producers all the time and how you can fix them. Mistake number 1. Weak kicks. Every week on my channel, I stream and give feedback on songs my community submits. And one of the most common issues I hear from newer producers is this. The arrangement is cool, the song is vibey, but where is the kick? Here, let me give you an example. Something a little like this. Where's the kick? Seriously, it's just way too subtle. Let's hear it soloed. It's missing 2 big things. A strong transient, that's like the click or snap at the beginning of the sound, and a deep sub, that really low frequency. Instead, you can see it here. This kick is hitting a lot in the lower mids, which is not necessarily what we want unless we're going for a specifically vintage sound. Okay, here's what you do if your kick is feeling a little weak. First thing I try when this happens is just looking for a stronger sample. Some people might say that doesn't technically fall under mixing, but to be honest, I've known a lot of mix engineers that replace kicks or snares, like those foundational elements, as they do their work, because that can make the biggest difference in the mix. It's all about making your track sound better, elevating it. So if that means replacing an element, so be it. Personally, when I do the swapping process, I like to split my kick into at least 2 tracks. One of them I call the body, and this is gonna be like your most powerful kick, the one that holds the most sub. Something like this. But I also like to do 1 or more extra layers. This layer right here specifically is my kick top. So this is the transient, the thing that really is gonna help it cut through the mix. And now to really make this kick package pop, we're gonna do a little bit of EQ boosting. So on the kick body, the powerful part, I'm gonna use a plugin called Mixbox, and inside it, I'm gonna use an EQ called EQPG. And what I'm specifically doing here is boosting 63 Hertz. So this is like your classic like sub frequency. It's really gonna enhance that low end for us. Let's kind of play with it and see how it affects it. This is obviously too much, but yeah, we're at it around 3 dBs. That adds a lot. That's good. And then for the kick click, I'm processing it through LANDR FX beats on the tight and punchy preset, which I love because it literally is like all attack. Here's without it and with it. It's awesome. So now when you play these together soloed, they sound like this. And with the track, it sounds like this. Mistake number 2. I call this smushed vocal layers. This happens when background harmonies and lead vocals are not mixed right together. Instead of enhancing your lead vocal, they actually make everything sound worse, like messy, hiding the lead instead of supporting it. Let me show you what this sounds like.
I could search high and low, I would not find it, no. Someone who would love me like you do, you know you're special.
So let's see what's happening here. I've got some dubs, 2 regular sounding dubs.
I could search high and low, I would not find it, no.
A couple of airy ones.
Someone who would love me like you do, you know you're special.
And I've got a nice harmony package too.
High and low, find it, no.
So why is everything so mushed together? That's because these parts are doing the wrong things in 4 key areas. Okay, let's fix this starting with the doubles. Let's go ahead and pan these dubs. I think the non-airy ones could be a little bit narrower, so about 20 or so here in Ableton, which is about halfway in the stereo image. And then the airy dubs, we can spread all the way to 50. This gives them 2 different spaces to exist in, and it gets them out of the way of the lead vocal. I'm also gonna go ahead and put the airy dubs into their own subgroup to process them a little bit differently from the main dubs. Next up, let's address volume. All of this is like way too loud. It's at 0, so let's go ahead and try about -7, -8, something like that. I do this to taste, but this is usually the volume I will start from and then go up or down depending on the song. You just don't want them to sit on top of the lead vocal, but behind it. Next, let's take a look at dynamics. You can literally see it in these waveforms. These were recorded without an outboard compressor, so some lines are a little bit softer like this, then some are a bit louder. This is normal. We just do need to compress in the box. To fix this, I'm using CorvPressor, and I'm not being too fancy here. I'm just using this Motown sausage preset. It smooths things out and just keeps everything at a consistent level. I didn't even need to turn the mix up that high. It's at like 21%, and I like how it sounds already. CorvPressor also has a built-in EQ, so here I've boosted a little bit of the mid, and I've actually rolled off some of the treble because I want the air frequency to come from my background vocals, not from these dubs. Next, we desperately need space, so I went ahead and added Rev Plate 140 to these dubs, which is an emulation of a classic EMT 140 plate verb. I'm using this preset Shy Reverb, and I basically just adjusted a little bit of the decay time. I took away some of the drive. It sounds really nice.
Go ahead, love me like you do, you know you're special.
It's not too much, but it definitely adds vibe. And then remember how I said I was going to process the airy dubs a little bit differently? So I went ahead and did that with parametric EQ also inside Mixbox. And basically I picked an air frequency. This is almost 9,000 hertz, and I turned it up quite a bit.
Someone who'd love me like you do, you know you're special.
Yeah, it's a lot sparklier. And next, I'm gonna go through a similar process with my BGVs. I'm gonna pan them hard left and hard right again to get them out of the way of the lead. I'm gonna compress just a little bit with this regular preset, which is like not too intense. Then I'm actually gonna double verb it, which is fun to do if the two verbs are deliberate and different from each other. I'm using LANDR FX voice on this I am in a room preset. It's a much shorter verb tail, literally sounds like a smaller room like this.
Love me like you do, you know you're special.
And then I'm adding another verb, which is Rev Plate 140 with a much longer decay time on top of it. So it creates an interesting effect.
Love me like you do, you know you're special.
All right, just so we remember, this is where we started.
I could search high and low, I would not find it, no.
And this is where we ended up.
Someone who'd love me like you do, you know you're special. Give me that thrill of light when we dance in the candlelight.
Much better. Mistake number 3. Another big mistake I hear all the time from new producers is Tinny Snares. It's super high-end heavy, and there's not much body or mid-range. Just kind of sounds like a little splash. And while that can work for certain tracks, most of the time you want your snare to feel balanced and strong, especially in upbeat pop or like commercial tracks. So here's how I rescue a snare like this and give it more punch. So step 1, assess what's going on. What are your layers? What do they sound like? And what's contributing to that tinny sound? This is my first layer here. A nice little snare, but yeah, definitely a lot of high end. And this is like a little bit wider and splashier, but yeah, no mid-range at all, which is why the package of these two together sounds like it does. So what I went ahead and did is I added another layer, which sounds like this. I chose it because it's pretty mid-range heavy, but I'm not gonna stop there. I'm gonna also add some processing to bring that frequency range out even more. So the first plugin in my chain is Black 76, which is an emulation of an 1176. The reason I picked this compressor is because these vintage units and their emulations, they come with a bit of harmonic enhancement just baked into how the unit works. I honestly am not doing anything too fancy here. As you can see, it's compressing just a bit. I mostly wanted it to add a little bit of character. Then I'm using British EQ and I'm boosting the lows and the lower mids. So yeah, around 200 hertz, just a bit of a bump. 400 hertz, also a bump. And finally, I'm adding a limiter just to keep everything under control. And now that I've processed the new snare layer, I'm going to add a little bit more processing to the entire snare group to tie everything together. I'm using Need 73 here, which is an emulation of the classic Neve 73 preamp and EQ. I'm boosting 7.2K here just a little bit to bring back some of that sparkle, because we did lose a bit by adding our super mid-rangey layer, and I'm very slightly boosting at 0.7 as well, just to kind of tie things together. As a reminder, this is what our snare used to sound like. And this is what it sounds like now. Still bright, but more powerful. Mistake number 4. One of the most common mistakes I see newer producers make is not resetting their headroom. Here's what I mean. When you're building a track using samples from platforms like LANDR, a lot of those samples are already compressed and loud. So if you keep adding sample after sample without watching your gain staging, things can start to stack up and you might end up with a track that sounds like this. Ow, my poor ears. Obviously, I turned everything up way too much just to make a point, but I've actually heard tracks submitted to my live streams that kind of sound like this, and I know why this happens. People get attached to the power of the loudness, but they don't realize it's actually hurting their mix. It's distorting, clipping, fighting itself, and just not sounding good. So here's how to fix this. I call this headroom reset, and I do this all the time, especially as I go from production into mixing. So the first thing you want to do is pull up this free plugin called Alina Loudness Meter and just check where things are at. I know if you're not a very technically leaning person, this can kind of seem like algebra, but I promise this is not that hard. There are really 2 values that you want to look at, and this is the integrated LUFS right here and the true peak max. This value represents the overall loudness of your mix. It basically takes your quietest moments, your loudest moments, and finds like the average, and that's this number. And then the true peak max is where your things are peaking, usually transient heavy things like kicks and snares, where they're sort of like popping up above the mix. So these numbers right here are not good at all. The integrated LUFS for a song like this, something pop leaning, for a master track should be around like minus 9.5 to like minus 6. And then the true peak max really should be under 0. So if you see something like this, don't worry, it's pretty easy to fix. The first thing you want to do is just turn everything down. So grab every single track that you have and go down on the volume. For something this crazy, I would go down like 8 dBs or something. Let's hear this.
Feelings under lock and key. Giving my trust ain't easy. I wanna let you in, but boy, my heart is.
That is massively better. And if you want to prevent yourself from getting to this point, one neat trick you can do is set your default track to have reduced gain. So in Ableton, you can put utility on it and put the gain down 6 dBs, 5 dBs, something like that. And then you just save it as a default track. And anytime you start a new session, that's what you're going to have. So it's going to automatically be a little bit quieter and keep you from getting to this stage. But honestly, once you reset your headroom, this is where you can start making some smart mix decisions because you can actually hear what things are doing. For example, here, I think the bass could go down just a little bit. I think some of the background vocals can be turned down. So yeah, now that I've opened up some space in this mix, I can go ahead and add a mastering plugin to this. LANDR Mastering Pro is one of my favorite mastering plugins. You just throw it on the master bus, you let it analyze the style, the feel of your song, and it basically makes a suggestion for what your master should sound like. 99 times out of 100, I really like the suggestion that it makes. All right, so this is the mastering vibe suggestion that LANDR Mastering Pro is making for my track.
Feelings under lock and key. Giving my trust ain't easy. I wanna let you in, but boy, my heart is.
Yeah, this gives you a great idea of what your track will sound like mastered. And then you can go back to the mix and make any adjustments that you need to make it even better. And then once you're close mix-wise, you can make mastering tweaks here like loudness, presence, if we wanted a little bit more vocal, for example. We can tweak EQ if we wanted to add a little bit of a low-end bump, widen the stereo image. Yeah, really easy to get a great sound. And now that we've done all this, let's go back to Alina Loudness Meter and just check where we're sitting as far as all our metering.
Feelings under lock and key. Giving my trust ain't easy.
Oh, this is looking so much more reasonable. See, it's still powerful, just like the crunchy version was, but without all the distortion. Mistake number 5. Okay, so throughout this video, I've showed you guys a lot of ways that I've grouped things. I've grouped background vocals together. I've grouped different layers of snares or kicks together. But now I want to dig a little bit into when to bus process things and when not to do it, because I see a lot of people kind of mess this up. So the general rule of thumb is to group what belongs together. Ask yourself, are these elements meant to feel like one thing? For example, I have this percussion group right here. So there are hats, there are shakers in here, and generally this is supposed to add like a top heavy layer to my frequency range. So yeah, to me, this makes sense to put together in a group. That way I can be like, oh, I want it to be a little bit brighter. So I can just use Need 73 here to brighten up the whole group, not one individual piece at a time. Oh yeah, that's nice and crispy. Really simple rule of thumb. If you can imagine taking the stack of sounds and turning it into one WAV file and just using that one WAV file in your track, it's good to group process. But this is where people mess up. They don't think that way, and instead they group things together because they're similar sounds. For example, bass and kick. I've heard, this type of thing where people go, oh, both of these are low, I'm gonna enhance the low. And they do something like this. And you can immediately hear that the kick gets overpowered by the bass. We lose the kick clarity. Generally, as a rule of thumb, I would say leave your bass, kick, and snare alone, plus anything that's supposed to be an accent by itself. All right, so these were the top 5 mixing mistakes I've seen newer producers make. Let me know if you've made any of them in the past. It's okay, but I hope this video helps level up your ears and your tracks. Also, every plugin I used in this video outside of the stock Ableton ones is available on LANDR.com if you want to try them out for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.